Hi, this is Randall here in Texas.
And I'm Matt, here in Michigan. Today, Randall and I are doing something a little bit different. Instead of taking a look at a movie or a full TV show, we're actually going to do part of a TV show. So Randall and I are taking a look at the first 7 episodes of The Bad Batch. It is created by Dave Filoni for Disney Plus and is a spin-off of the Clone Wars animated series. It follows a group of genetically enhanced clones during and after the events of Order 66. The show basically takes a look at the beginning of the Galactic Empire. Now, if you like this review, be sure to give us a thumbs up. Also, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell and get notifications about our latest videos. Randall, we are 7 episodes into The Bad Batch. What do you think about the show so far?
Oh yeah, don't forget audience, we're going to be getting into spoilers here, so if you haven't seen it, don't blame us because I just warned you. Spoilers! What do I think about Bad Batch so far is it's a little uneven, but leans much more towards positive than it does towards negative. I like it more than I dislike it by a long shot. There are some things that definitely bug me about it, but for the most part, it's been entertaining. It fits very well with like established canon for the most part again. And I just think that it's a little bit too much of this or not enough of this, just a little bit uneven for my liking.
Yeah, for me, this is kind of like a typical like first season of a Filoni thing, like Rebels or like Clone Wars, where it's like as a whole, I mean, it's okay. I think I like certain elements of like episodes. I think different elements are pretty strong, and I think I can attach myself to those elements that actually stand out and stuff that's pretty good. But, as a whole, so far, I enjoy these characters. They're pretty good. And, it's interesting that we're at this 7th episode that we're doing this discussion stuff too, because I think the 7th episode is actually where we're starting to see some of the things come to a head that we established or we're trying to build up to in previous episodes of the series.
Yeah, the series does seem to be a little bit slow in my opinion, but maybe that's just because the way media is nowadays. We just want things to happen right now.
And he is most displeased with your apparent lack of progress.
But, finally, episode 7, the end of it sees us getting in the right direction. I think we're actually starting to ramp up towards what we want as a conclusion for this series, or at least for this season of this series. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a series that continues. But for me, and I think for you, because we talked about it a little bit off screen and previous to this, episode 1 in this series is really well. It's like so far, that is the episode that really hits home and is probably the best of the first half of Bad Batch.
Oh yeah, I agree. I think we get a lot of those really good elements in that first episode. It's a really good like kicking off part. And we have a lot of different things like, hey, where are we going to have these characters go? It's a really good establishing point. Like, all right, we got some new characters that are going to be important. Talking specifically about Omega. Hey, we got a little bit of hints of like other stuff from other Star Wars stuff and other characters that we kind of sprinkle in here a little bit. It's a good start. It's a good kind of going over. And I say if we kind of have like, I guess bookends, it's really good. I think season 1, episode 1 started off real well. And this 7th episode 2 is kind of like, hey, we're actually kind of getting to the things that we build up to so far.
Yeah, so in episode 1, what I think why it works so well is you have established characters. The Bad Batch was established in season 7 of the Clone Wars. Tarkin's established through multiple things. The Kaminoans are all established in the prequels. You're not starting out from scratch like you are with Rebels, where here's this whole group of characters that you don't have any investment in and you just need to care about them because they're the good guys. We're not really that way in this. In this, we have established characters. You don't necessarily know their individual quirks and stuff, but that's fine. The biggest reason it works is because it takes all of the chaos at the end of episode 3 and it actually expands on it. It actually says, here's what happens at the dawn of the Empire. And this first episode just flies straight into that. It was really, really well done. And I think that the rest of the series since then did slow down quite a bit. Some of it for good, some of it for bad, and it just it didn't get on with the plot as much as I wanted it to, as much as this first episode made me think it was going to.
And some of those other characters that are already established that are kind of like sprinkled in through different episodes, I think some of them are kind of like hit and miss on how effective they were. Like, I think, kind of having like the Kanan show up in like the first episode and where it is, to me, that worked really well. I don't know really about like, Trace and Rafi or whatever. I don't know, they're kind of divisive when it comes to like Star Wars fans. I mean, me personally, they were probably my least favorite episodes of the final season of the Clone Wars. And in this one too, we get an episode with them where it's like, kind of take it or leave it. We're kind of like building them to be like bigger players in something else that we're kind of like hinting to or whatever. And another character we just got in the 7th episode, Rex. To me, that kind of had mixed things too. I love Rex. Rex is one of my favorite characters. So I'm excited to see Rex. But at the same time too, it's really Rex is in there just to kind of like go back to something. Like something that, we're kind of established early on and that we didn't hit for like 5 episodes. We're talking about like the chips or whatever. Rex is kind of introduced here to like get us back to that. Like, hey, you have these chips and, with Wrecker, we have this like ticking time bomb thing that's going on. Now let's actually bring those to like fruition kind of thing. So I can see Rex kind of doing that storyline too.
The chip storyline is one of the things that bugs me the most about like why we're not getting on with this. They know about the chips. Omega told them about the chips. They saw what happened to the other clones. They saw how their complete disposition changed, like how they became not even they became less individualized just by the activation of their chips, basically. And I'm like, why aren't you guys taking care of your chips? You have Wrecker here, like you mentioned. He keeps hitting his head and he gets these headaches, and it's like, you guys know that this is a thing, and you think that you're just, going to be okay, but no, your chips are totally still there, and you're supposed to be smart. And yeah, like you said, it's basically like, hey, we have to introduce a character who's gonna tackle that head on, and I'm happy it was Rex, honestly, because he makes the most sense for it. But it was like, hey, we have to have this done. How do we get it done? Okay, here's Rex.
It's kind of interesting because that, it kind of ties into like Crosshair too, because Crosshair is like the one character that like the inhibitor chip really like worked to like the fullest extent and stuff too. Even though it seemed like he might have been fighting it a little bit at the beginning of that first episode, but you can see that it was definitely affecting him. So it's kind of weird how that they were kind of like, well, the chips don't really affect us enhanced clones kind of thing, even though it did affect Crosshair, and, that we shouldn't be really blind to the fact that something is definitely happening to Wrecker. We need to get this taken care of kind of thing. So, yeah, I agree with you on that.
Let's light a fire here, guys. Come on. Let's snap to it. You know that this is a problem. Let's take care of it. Yeah, it was slow, like I said. That's a part of the series where I'm like, wow, why aren't we taking care of this? Why is the story not moving on? And then other parts of the series, though, move, in my opinion, and Hunter's opinion, way too fast. So that's what I'm talking about when I say it's kind of unbalanced. Imagine if you just, like, one day you're part of a republic. Yes, granted, there's this war going on. And then the next day, someone's like, all right, you have to register. And we're going to change your currency, and we're going to restrict who can fly. They do that all in like 2 months after the Clone Wars. It's just like, whoa, that was fast. And Hunter literally says it in an episode, like episode 4. Everything's happening faster than I thought. And I'm like, yep, yeah, it really is.
I agree with you. I'm glad we get that acknowledgement from Hunter. It definitely kind of shows that, hey, yeah, I mean, we understand that that this is fast, and it's not just kind of like, hey, yeah, we're going to do stuff fast and hope no one really notices or cares what's going on.
Hope the audience doesn't notice.
But also, it kind of shows, like, the Emperor, too, like, hey, he had some plans in mind that he wanted to get going right off the bat, and, just waiting for that moment for, Order 66 to get the Jedi, which is, what he saw at least, his prevention of him actually being able to do some of these things. So now that the Jedi are gone, I can start, going through with my plans and kind of stuff too.
Yeah, but it's still off-putting because you have the established canon of Rebels and A New Hope where everything is really starting to come to a head then. And at the beginning of New Hope, Tarkin says the Empire has disbanded the Senate. That's how long it really should take for a lot of these changes, not like instant, like we're seeing in Bad Batch. So it does really strike me as odd that that's the way they chose to depict it. Like, I understand we're making this transition or pivot, if you will, towards the Empire. I just think, man, it's happening so quickly in this series that it kind of starts stepping on established in video, like on screen canon. That's fine. Well, I should say that's not fine in my opinion. You guys all know that I'm a stickler for on screen canon, I guess. It's balanced so well by the fact that I care about these characters and what they're doing. That's why I say everything leans towards good for me. I feel better about the series.
Yeah, I agree with the characters too. I like that we have these characters different, and it's something we've been building on since the Clone Wars. Is how these clones on how they're actually different, even though they're clones of the same person. And these with like enhancements and stuff, the enhancements kind of lend to their personalities a little bit here. What they're good at kind of makes them a little bit different personality wise. And I like that. I think we have some good characters in here. And I think this 7th episode, we're finally get to the point where we're actually starting to see relationships between our characters, kind of more strongly and see how they interact with each other a little bit better. And one relationship, in particular I'm looking at, which took a little bit to build, I think, is this relationship that we have between Wrecker and our new character, Omega. And it's something that, we were kind of like building to, but this 7th episode really helped, solidify a bit on, what these two characters actually mean to each other and stuff too. But, in talking about Omega, Randall, what do you think about this new character of Omega?
Wrecker and Omega get along so well because they're both just kids.
They're kids at heart, both of them.
They're kids at heart, both of them, yeah. So Omega, I'm glad you brought up Omega. She's an interesting new addition. It's always risky to bring in a kid. It really is. I mean, ask the creators of The Next Generation how well fans enjoyed Wesley, okay? If you're really into Star Wars, if you really care about the canon and you follow everything, Omega's character makes so much more sense. Because you're like, okay, the Kaminoans are trying to make a Force-sensitive clone. You don't really know for a fact whether the clone is supposed to be, like, for them and their uses, or for the Empire's uses, although if you pay attention to the canon, obviously the Empire usurps it at some point. So Omega's character is really interesting for the clones, for the established characters, the Bad Batch, and how they have to deal with her, and how she always gets herself in these ridiculous damsel in distress situations. But really, on the bigger thing, I think you're going to see some real, potentially dark turns with what they end up doing with her character, because her whole point, I think, really is this going towards, let's face it, Snoke, And they did some stuff with that towards Mandalorian with like, hey, here's the Baby Yoda and, Grogu and his midichlorian counts, because they got to bring that back. Omega is in that vein. That's what they're working towards with her. But her character is so innocent and so lovely.
Yeah, we definitely get Omega. We get that, typical Star Wars character. We get that Luke Skywalker. We get that Rey. We get that Ezra Bridger. She's in that same kind of mold where we have, this younger character who's a little bit different than everyone else for some reason. And they're kind of like exploring this world for the first time. And kind of, trying to make Star Wars a little bit fresher. And one thing they're looking at, a younger person to help bring in another audience. And at the same time, too, like, we can take this younger character and have them go to, like, things that are already established in Star Wars and make them new, because we're seeing these areas from a new perspective, because we have someone that's experiencing all these for the first time.
Yeah, she gives the audience an in as well, for, like you said, not just younger audiences, but just audiences in general. She's that fish out of water character for people who don't know anything. That honestly works very well in Star Wars and science fiction in general. You take these characters who are, not very wise to the surroundings, and that's a character that you can latch onto. I don't know anything about this. Neither does that character. I'll latch onto them. Omega's that character for this series, and she's going to be special. She's going to be important, because I've watched too much Dave Filoni series to think otherwise, basically.
Well, and like you said too, it's like kind of like mixed reactions first too. You take that risk with having this new character. I mean, you look at Ahsoka, like Ahsoka doesn't really make sense, kind of thing. And it's a character when you first get her, it's kind of like, but she's someone you really do warm up to. So it'll be interesting to see how much we feel about Omega. I mean, if she has kind of a similar thing as Ahsoka, I mean, not saying Omega is going to be as big and popular as Ahsoka, but it'll be interesting to see if more fans like warm up, like what kind of character Omega turns into, later on.
Now, there is one more storyline that I definitely want to get to that I think is very important and will end up being more important as it goes on. Maybe I'm wrong. But it's the clones. Not just the Bad Batch clones, but the clones in general. So when these inhibitor chips, come on in their heads, they don't just become anti-Jedi. They don't just go around just killing Jedi. They become pro-Empire, pro-Emperor Palpatine. It completely transitions them almost back to stock settings from some perspective, where if you're not with us, you're against us.
Good soldiers follow orders.
That's very different. They strove, and they became, like you mentioned, the clones became these individuals through the Clone Wars. And then these inhibitor chips come, and really everyone is just back to being a clone. And when I first watched this, and I'm like, okay, these guys are ruthless now, and they're very efficient, they're well trained, they're very experienced. Why on earth would Tarkin and the Empire ever get rid of them? That was my standing when I started watching this series. Wow, that's stupid, because stormtroopers are awful. Why would you ever switch over to conscripts from these people? In reality, well, at least what I think in my reality, my headcanon right now, is the clones are a big liability to the Empire. As soon as you switch off that inhibitor chip, they're back to just being loyal to the Republic. They basically go back to the way they were before Order 66, the way they were before the chip was turned on. You see that with Wrecker, where it's he remembers what happened while his chip was on, but he really just goes straight back to being the way he was without it. And if the rebellion ever got their hands on a whole bunch of clones and was able to take their chips out, or turn the chips off, or reprogram the chips, that's a huge liability to the Empire. And all of a sudden I'm like, hey, I understand now why you would try and pivot away from the clones, because they are absolutely a liability to your plans.
And I think probably too, part of the reason they might have switched to the stormtroopers, we'll probably see a little bit more of that in this, but I think it's a little bit of indoctrination or whatever of the citizens. You can already pre-program clones and stuff too, but I think you can probably get people to accept the Empire more if they have an active hand, or at least think that they're having an active hand in the Empire. So if you have a brother or someone who is enlisted in the Imperial Academy, you might have a little bit more positive views of this Empire than as opposed to all these clones or all of our soldiers are just things that we made and not someone that's in our community. So it'll be interesting to see if we explore that a little bit more in this show.
And honestly, they did touch on it ever so slightly with the first batch of recruited soldiers, where they have one line. It's just one quick line of, well, at least the Empire pays me, Okay, yeah, for a lot of people, the Empire is going to be a path towards having a stable life. basically. After planets are completely wrecked and ruined and economies are gone, where else do you look other than, the big central bureaucracy? So yeah, that also is a way forward too. And like, yeah, we want our people to care about the soldiers. And how do you get them to care? Well, you make them volunteer where you can. Other than that, you put them in slave camps and you don't talk about it until Rebels.
I think we're definitely going to see more of the Stormtrooper versus Clone Trooper. I think right now where we are in the show, they're kind of like still like, I don't know, I wouldn't say on the fence. They probably do have ideas of what they want to do, but it's more of like, hey, which route are we going to go? Are we going to go Stormtrooper or are we going to go Clone Trooper 2? So it'll be interesting to see if we actually see, what causes them to make that decision.
I'll tell you what, we know what the ultimate decision is, but if you're going to cheap out because you don't want to pay for clones and you think it's cheaper to have conscripts, why'd you cheap out so much on their armor?
It's a different ideologically. Instead of having superiority, it's just numbers. We're just going to throw numbers. That's why we have TIE fighters, and that's why we have Stormtroopers. We're just going to throw numbers at you.
Yep. I finally watched Rebels, and we're going to do a whole thing about Rebels because I finally did watch it. But there's a scene in Rebels where Rex takes a blaster shot to the helmet, his old school clone helmet, and survives.
All right.
I'm good. Generation 1 armor always holds up.
A stormtrooper gets clipped in the shoulder or famously not even hit and falls down. That's most of the mid-season stuff that we wanted to talk about for the Bad Batch. It's definitely an interesting series, and there's lots of storyline left to go, but mostly positive. There's a lot of good stuff going on here. You see the very small beginnings of the rebellion. You see characters that you're familiar with. You see some new characters. It's been a lot of fun to watch the first half, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see where it goes. And guys, don't worry, Randall and I are going to do a full review of season 1 when it wraps up. So you'll get our thoughts and feelings about it then. But we also want to know where you guys think about it so far. If you've watched it, let us know in the comments below. Also, be sure to check out some of our other videos. We have new movie reviews, flashback movie reviews. We take a look at other TV shows, and we have deeper dive discussions.
Make sure, if you haven't already, that you check us out over on Facebook. We also post the day before what we're going to be posting on YouTube next, so make sure to check it out. We post new videos every Monday and Thursday, so make sure to come back and check those out. For now, I'm Randall here in Texas. See everyone next time.
And I'm Matt here in Michigan. Have a good day, everyone. Next time on No Market Media. Please consider checking out some of our other videos.